And it really makes your heart stop when you see this big red back come out of the water, and then they start woofing at the lure trying to grab it, and some of them will go a few times before they get hold of it, and then everything lights up. But the main reason for using top water is because the water is that shallow, you can't use diving lures because you get hooked up on the bottom. And we started off using 10-pound leader, but you've got to go up to something like 14 because 10 was a little light. For a 65 mil Sammy with 2 single hooks on it, you need lighter line to cast with. So we were using 10-pound braid and 10-pound leader. And now we've gone up to a bit more sensible 15-pound braid, and then the leader anywhere from 8-pound to...
Ladies and gents, welcome to another episode of the Australian Lure Fishing Podcast for this Monday, the 28th of June. And let me tell you, this is an interesting little episode because when I was a kid and I first got introduced to snapper fishing, it was all about 30-pound nylon lines, 2-pound snapper leads, and half a pilchard plummeting through the depths in the hopes that it might get taken by a snapper. And then quite a few years ago, I started hearing stories about people catching snapper on soft plastics, and I thought, could that be right? Snapper on soft plastic lures? Surely not. And then it progressed to hard-bodied lures. So I suppose it shouldn't have come as that much of a surprise when I saw some video on social media recently of today's guest, Mike Connolly, and of course, Nige Webster from AFN, targeting snapper on the surface on little stick baits, walk the dog lures in Moreton Bay. I thought, wow, what a long way we've come as anglers from those days back then when we were targeting them on heavy lines and heavy sinkers and large baits. So I knew I had to get Mike on the show. Luckily, it didn't take too much coaxing. We got him on board. And that's what today's episode is all about, fishing for snapper in the shallows of Moreton Bay on surface lures. So folks, let's get the intro music out the way, and then let's get Mike Connolly on board and get today's episode underway.
This is the Australian Lure Fishing Podcast, where we share the secrets of Australia's lure fishing gurus every Monday, Wednesday and Friday. And now here's your host, Greg Vinal from doclures.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 389 of the Australian Lure Fishing Podcast. Great to have your company today. My name's Greg Doclures Vinal, and my job is to bring you some of Australia's best and brightest anglers each and every week to share some tips with us about fishing with lures that are going to help you and I catch more fish on lures as well. Now, today's guest has been a tournament angler in the past. He's done a bit of fishing TV. He's done quite a lot of stuff, bit of writing for Fishing Monthly and others, but he's backed away from all of that now, just fishes for fun. But tell you what, he knows his stuff, and we're going to have a really fun conversation about one of those opportunistic little things. You guys know how I love stories a little bit different and opportunities that are a little bit different and guys who are doing things that aren't quite the norm, and this is definitely one of those stories. So we're going to be talking about fishing for snapper in the shallows of Moreton Bay. We're going to be talking about targeting snapper on surface lures. As I say, it's a very opportunistic thing. You've got to be there at the right time, and that time's not very predictable. You just got to be prepared so that when it happens, you are Johnny on the spot and you can get a lure in amongst it. But what am I doing telling you all about it? Let's get our guest, Mike Connolly, on the line and get chatting. G'day, Mike. How you going, mate?
Oh, great, thanks.
That's great to have you on board. And mate, I caught a little bit of your segment with Nige Webster on AFN just recently on social media, saw you catching topwater snapper, got in touch with Nige, who said, you got to talk to Mike. He knows this stuff really well. It's a lot of fun. And apparently you took him out there and, you know, you showed him what really good topwater snapper fishing was like. And then when you brought the camera out the next day, you know, everything went pear-shaped as is what usually happens when you put a camera on the water, mate. But you got him onto enough fish to put a story together.
Oh, exactly right. We got some reasonable fish on the second day, but the first day we had a cracker, and the weather conditions were a little better. But as you know, when the cameras come out, things can change quite severely.
Yeah, they certainly can. And, you know, crazy things like, you know, people drop their rods over the side of the boat. Although I probably shouldn't mention that. It's probably been done to death. But, you know, I'm sure Nigel will be listening to this and he'll enjoy knowing that just a few more people have heard about the disaster. So, mate, we're going to get talking about topwater snapper in just a minute. I'm really excited to be talking about this particular topic. Before we do, though, let's introduce you a little bit more fully to our audience by going through some of these questions that I like to call our getting to know you questions. So we're going to be focused on snapper for this particular episode. But, Mike, what are the other species that you like to throw lures at when you're not targeting snapper?
Oh, I love catching bass and barra. I've fished overseas in the US Open and fished on the pro circuit there for a bit of fun, fished in South Africa, fished here. And I just really love getting out and chasing fish on lures and working out how to do that and be flexible with it because it changes the whole time.
Well, it does, and it's only limited by your ability to adapt and to try different things and to be creative. As soon as you stop doing that, of course, lure fishing becomes boring because you're just doing the same thing over and over.
Oh, I don't know too much about that. When I went to the US, I fished with Gary Boyd over there. He had a double garage that was just full of lures and rods and tackle for his tournament because he was a pro fisherman. And what amazed me is he had boxes up on the racks, and they were marked by the month, by the colour, by the lake, by the river, whatever it was. And those were the colour patterns and the depth patterns and everything else for those particular months of the year because it's very seasonal in the US. And that just goes to show here we don't have those same issues with changing conditions where it gets really cold and really hot. So, yeah, it's much more stable here. And then you've got to try and work that out on tides, time of day, time of year, whether there's wind or no wind, and take it from there.
Well, that's why you're here, mate. You're going to help us out with all of that stuff in just a minute when we start talking about snapper. You're the man with all the answers. Hey, let's have a talk about somewhere that you'd like to fish. And you just mentioned a whole bunch of places that you have fished, but if you could just down tools for a week, you had no budget limitations, you had no other responsibilities, you could just take off with a fishing rod to anywhere in Australia, mate, where would you like to spend that week and why?
I'll spend it up north of it, chasing some big barra in the rivers and mangrove jacks and threadfin and fingermark and all those nice fun fish to catch.
There's a lot of territory up north though, mate. Whereabouts? North Queensland, Northern Territory, Western Australia, anywhere in particular?
North Queensland, and then of course there's the Kimberleys. I mean, there's just so many options here. Yeah, it doesn't really matter.
What's a species that's still on your bucket list? Have you got one that you haven't caught yet, desperately would like to tick off before you kick off?
Oh, I haven't really put a lot of thought into that one. You know, really, it's just get out on the water and catch what's there on the day and work out patterns and where they are and find them and then catch them.
Fair enough. Mate, what's something if we were to rummage through your gear, and you've been doing fishing for a long time, so you've probably got a few things, but what's something if we were to rummage through your gear that we might find that we wouldn't find in the average angler's tackle box or in their boat?
Oh, mine's, of course, bait hooks. Don't use that stuff. You've got to get a nail brush and soap out to clean your hands afterwards.
So it's something we wouldn't find in your boat is bait hooks?
No, I don't use bait at all, only lures.
Yeah, for how long?
Years and years.
Yeah. Well, that's music to our ears. And I think a lot of our listeners are that way, and certainly a lot of our guests are very much lure only. There's a few around that use bait, and that's fine. But, yeah, you don't need to use bait. There's plenty of fish can be caught on lures.
But lures are a really good challenge because you got colours, you got depth, you got everything else, and you can work through that and work out what's right on the day, and that's more challenge than sticking a lump of something on a hook and dropping it over and waiting for fish to come along. You've got to go out there and chase them and hunt them and work out what they're doing.
Yeah, look, I know there'll be some bait anglers that might take exception to that, and I have to say, I think they're really skilled bait fishing. It really is an art, but I agree with you. I think the lure fishing takes a lot more thought. It's a bit more active form of fishing, generally speaking. You cover a lot more water and you need to think about what you're doing a lot more and try a lot more different things to try and figure the fish out on the day. So I'm with you. I don't fish with bait either. So let's move on from that.
Well, I'd take my hat off to the billfish anglers that go out there and spend hours setting up baits and everything else for the troll baits and everything with it. They do a magnificent job, and it's a real technique, and it's the same with us, I suppose. It's instead of using a fish and fixing it up really nice, that looks great to a marlin. We chase them on the lures here and just change colours, profiles.
Profiles, actions, sounds, whatever it takes, change the terminals over, do different things. We're going to get into that a bit later on. We're getting ahead of ourselves here. Let's have a chat about a favourite piece of fishing technology, mate, or a favourite fishing gadget. What would you have that you'd like to share with us?
Electric motor.
Yep. What have you got on your boat? What electric?
I've got a Minn Kota spot lock unit, 24 volt, hand control and foot pedal coming. It's on back order.
Yep.
But that's the best piece of machinery on a boat when you're chasing fish with lures.
Yeah. Certainly in the shallow water. Yeah, I think if you're fishing deep water and fishing lakes and that kind of thing, depth sounder becomes very important too. But quite often in estuaries and bays, if you're fishing shallow water and snags and structure and that kind of thing, being able to stay on position, on the fish, that's far more important.
Yeah, staying on position with the electric is more important than the sounder.
And, Moreton Bay is a place, for those who don't know the bay, it's a place where you can get some pretty good currents and you certainly get some good winds, and staying on the fish, a bit of a challenge.
Yes, spot locking helps.
Yeah, it certainly does. It certainly does. Who's somebody, mate, if you could go out for a fish with absolutely anybody, who's somebody you'd like to spend a day out in the water with, flicking some lures around, having a bit of a chat and just enjoying the day?
Well, anybody that's got a really good interest, and I feel I can fish with and enjoy the day instead of unhooking the lure every 5 minutes and basically being a decky. That's not so much fun. But when somebody is really keen, I take people out reasonably often that are very, very keen to go, and some of the young guys as well. Sometimes it's a bit frustrating, but most of the time it's really, really good fun, and they learn a lot, and I learn too.
Well, we all have to learn somewhere, don't we? So it's a good thing to take people out that, maybe need to work on their skills or are just getting started and don't have the skills yet. But it's also very nice when you're a keen angler to be out on the water with somebody who is just as skilled, so that you can actually both focus on fishing and you don't become the guide for the day.
Yes. You learn that quite quickly with tournament fishing. The person you got on the boat as a non-boater or as a partner, it's critical, because what we do then is we use different lures, different colours, try and find a pattern. And when we crack onto one, well, we're in the fish, aren't we?
And you're working as a team rather than working as individuals with one leading the other.
Exactly right.
Let's talk about snapper now, mate. And you've caught plenty of these fish, but tell us a story of when you first discovered snapper on the surface, mate. Tell us about that first snapper you ever caught on a surface lure.
What happens in Moreton Bay here, sometimes you've got what they call bay anchovies, and then you've got your other bait fish. And at times, like this time of the year is pretty good, the bait fish get pushed up into the shallows by all sorts of different fish. Okay, so you've got your brim, you've got your tailor, you've got snapper, you've got mackerel, you're even chasing these things up into the shallows. And when you can have a reasonably calm water surface and see bait fish skipping and boils underneath it, that means snapper. The tailor and the mackerel slash at it. You can see them getting pretty active. The snapper boil underneath. They don't actually come clear out of the water and jump on things. And when they're active, there's an area of water in front of you, and you can see these boils going on, a little bait fish skipping. Then you get excited. Out with the top water and do a fairly fast retrieve, walking the dog, and really makes your heart stop when you see this big red back come out of the water, and then they start woofing at the lure trying to grab it, and some of them will go a few times before they get hold of it, and then everything lights up. But the main reason for using top water is because the water is that shallow, you can't use diving lures because you get hooked up on the bottom. And we started off using 10-pound leader, but you've got to go up to something like 14 because 10 was a little light. But for a 65 mil Sammy with 2 single hooks on it, you need lighter line to cast with. So we were using 10-pound braid and 10-pound leader. And now we've gone up to a bit more sensible 15-pound braid, and then the leader anywhere from 8-pound to 14.
Cool.
And the length of the leader is quite important too, because fluorocarbon sinks. So if your leader's too long, it's really hard to get a small surface lure to walk. And that hence the quicker retrieve too.
Yeah. Tell us about the quality of the fish that you're catching using this technique, mate. Are they little tiny pinkies or are they big knobbies? What's on the cards?
Okay, well, there's 2 scenarios. When they're right up in the shallows, the fish go up to about 55 centimetres.
What do you call the shallows? We talking less than a metre here? We talking 2 to 3 metres?
Yeah.
Yep.
You can virtually sight fish them in a metre of water. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, watch them come up and take it in some cases, and then that goes down to about 2.5 metres of water, and after that it's not much good.
Okay.
So this is when they've got the bait bunched up right into the back of shallows, And then you get brim, you get tailor, you get snapper. You don't know what's coming next, which is a lot of fun.
It's exciting fishing, yeah. But, of course, we're talking about snapper today because that's a rather unusual species. I mean, all of those other species, of course, you do get them quite consistently off the surface, trevally and mackerel as well, and lots of different species that can be smacking the poor old pilchards and anchovies around in Moreton Bay.
Yep.
But snapper's one that most people wouldn't think about being a surface fish, and I guess they do come into the very shallow water, and they come in there for one reason and one reason alone. That's because there's bait in there. And once you're in a metre of water, it doesn't really matter whether your lure's 50 centimetres below the surface or right on the surface. It's really not much difference, is it, to the fish that's coming up to take it?
Yeah, but the surface strike is so visual. It's absolutely awesome.
Yep.
And the other area where we get them on the surface is when the blue jellyfish come in and get wind blown into the fringe of the reef. So you've got like 1 to 2 metres water on top of the reef, and then it drops down to 4 or 5 metres in front, and the jellyfish sort of bunch up, and the snapper come up underneath and bite chunks out of them, and you can see them bouncing. And you put a top water next to that jellyfish, and it just gets smashed.
Yeah.
So that's the other. So you've actually got to recognise the feeding habit that's happening at that stage and work out whether it's sweet lip, snapper, whatever it might be on those, on those jellies.
Fish. Yep.
But the big snapper love those jellyfish. You put a lure next to them, they'll take it straight away.
Well, I have to say, mate, I remember having a conversation with a chap, and I used to fish Moreton Bay quite a bit years ago, and having a conversation with the chap I met down on the waterfront one day while I was walking the dog, and he was a keen fisher, and he said to me, he said it's not worth going out at the moment, too many jellyfish out there. And I kind of looked at him, and he looked back at me, and I started telling him about, what's underneath the jellyfish. He said, He said, I thought they just made it hard to fish and hard to see things on the sounder.
No, it's really obvious because the jellyfish have got no legs hanging underneath anymore, and they've got big chunks taken out of what's left, and straight away the snapper into them.
Yeah. I suspect that this particular gentleman and probably lots of others at the time were not slowing down enough to be able to see that. They were probably seeing the jellyfish and going through them at 20 knots trying to find a patch of water that didn't have any jellyfish, and in so doing they were leaving all the fish behind. So
Quite often the sort of best time is the last 3 hours of run out when the water's coming back off the reef and putting a bit of pressure on the front edge.
Yep. Okay.
And giving the bait less space so that it draws the fish out to any drains, nice drop-offs and that sort of thing.
And I guess this is where I was going to come to next, is how to go about finding places where we might come across these opportunities. And as I said at the start, this is not something where you can say, the snapper are going to be biting on the top today. You just need to be cognizant that this is a possibility, be ready to go if the opportunity arises and know what to do. But if we were to try and narrow down when this kind of thing, when this snapper on the surface phenomenon happens most often, do you reckon you could give us any clues in terms of time of year? You've just said the run-out tide's good. Weather conditions or anything like that? Is there anything that sort of, any pieces of the puzzle we can pull together to give ourselves just that little bit more chance?
Well, the idea is when you're out on the water, look for baitfish sprays. Where the baitfish are going to hammer it from underneath, there it is, bang.
Yeah.
Go straight over to where the baitfish is spraying, get your lure in there, chances on you're on. And boils underneath instead of slashing. Slashing is tuna or bonito or something like that.
Or max, yep.
Yeah, if it's just boiling underneath with the baitfish spraying and no sort of surface action, and that's snapper. And quite often people will see baitfish spraying and say, there's a school of tailor hammering the bait over there. Brim. Or snapper.
Yep.
And the big brim do the same thing. I mean, it's quite often catch them over 40 centimetres there in the same scenario, chasing bait.
Yep. Not to be sneezed at. Very welcome bycatch at that size.
They're good fun.
Yep.
And we just let them go. But the big thing with the 65 Sammy, which is what I use quite often because it's a very good mimic of the baitfish, especially the ghost shrimp colour with the green tail, that's a very good attractor. If you like put it that, but you've got to upgrade the split rings and upgrade the hooks. Otherwise, you're going to have the hook ring, the split rings just get straightened out and you end up with no hooks and just a barrel.
Yeah, because, I mean, you're essentially throwing a little whiting lure at 50 centimetre plus snapper, aren't you? So those hooks were never intended for that. So recall you mentioned using single hooks on the lures. So could you give us a bit of an idea of what we should be looking for in terms of the size of hooks and the style of hooks to go on a 65? It's only a pretty small lure.
It is. It's a pretty small lure. So we look at a single hook that is robust. In other words, pretty solid hook. Otherwise, a snapper just crunch them.
Yeah. They got some pretty bony jaws. Yeah. I mean, you look at their teeth, they're designed for crushing shellfish and that sort of thing.
Well, they crush the hooks pretty well too.
They have no problems with a light hook at all. Yeah.
And they tend to destroy treble hooks very quickly, so the singles are a lot better.
Yeah, they're better for the fish as well. If you can let any of them go, they do a lot less damage and they're less likely to pull out as well. So it's a win all round.
It is.
Let's just go back to the tackle a little bit more. So you've given us a pretty good idea on line classes. You're now fishing a 15-pound line and you've bumped your leaders up a little bit and using fluorocarbon, good length of fluorocarbon leader, presumably for not only its ability to be low visibility, but also fairly abrasion resistant. And I'd imagine when you're targeting snapper in shallow water, you're going to get leaders running over rocks and coral and stuff from time to time. But could you walk us through rods and reels, mate? Because you're throwing, once again, as we've said it a couple of times, a very small lure, but you're targeting a fish that can take a bit of stopping as well. So talk to us about rods and reels.
So I use 2500 exists.
Yep.
The Dyer exists. And the important criteria there is it's got a very good drag. That's critical because you have to have it up fairly tight. And then I use a 7-foot extra fast graphite rod. I use the edges or Loomis are good. There's quite a few rods out there now that'll fit the bill on that one.
What sort of line class, mate? A 6 kilo-ish sort of a
No.
No, like
we use 2 to 4 kilo most of the time, just light rods and just have fun with it. I mean, we do get smoked, but that's half the fun.
Yep.
When you get absolutely torn apart, that's good. You chase them with the electric and everything you can, and they end up finding a bit bomby somewhere and wrapping you up. Done. But it's surprising how many really good fish we take out of there. I mean, on plastics, I use a 1/4 ounce jig head with a 3/0 heavy wire hook. I use a 4-inch or 5-inch baby bass style or colour split tail plastic, and I'll take snapper up to, the last one I landed a little about 82 centimetres. So very nice fish, around the
very large.
7 to 8 kilo mark. And then there's some that I've just had no hope in stopping. And that's all on light gear. And as long as the sharks don't get them, right up in the shallows, you don't have that much issue. In the deep water, you've got no chance with light gear. In the bay at the moment, there's bull sharks on every wreck.
Yep. All right. So spin gear, obviously, because you're throwing small light lures, 3 to 4 kilo rod, 2500 size reel, 15-pound braid, 14, 15, 20-pound leader.
No, I'd never go to 20.
Not as high as 20?
No, I use 14 or 12 most of the time. 14 if there's long tails around.
Yep.
And that's like a 55-minute struggle.
Yeah.
But it's surprising how many longtails come right up in the shallows chasing the bait too, and you don't see them busting the surface. You just hook up and hang on.
Yeah, suddenly the line's peeling off your reel. Okay.
They just take off at 100 mile an hour and you know, tuna.
Can I just go back a couple of steps to conditions? Talk to us about, if you could wave your magic wand and you could create the perfect conditions. We already know about, you like the run out tide. What about things like water clarity? Is that important? And cloud cover and lunar cycles and barometric pressures, any of those things that you kind of might say might help with the snapper bite?
Cloudy days, they bite longer. The normal bite is from daylight till an hour after sunrise.
Okay.
On a clear day, on a fully cloud day, they bite a lot longer. Or they stay active a lot longer. I prefer the last 3 hours of the run-out tide. If it's sort of 5 to 8 knots of wind, that's pretty ideal. Anything over 10 knots, I don't bother.
Right.
Because I've only got a bull shark, so I haven't got a huge boat. But to run up in the shallows and follow the reef edges and that sort of stuff, it's absolutely perfect. So I can go out and chase whiting or flathead, snapper, squid, whatever I feel like on the day.
Lots of options in Brisbane with a boat of that size.
Just do it for fun, that's why.
Let's go back to lures, mate. So Sammy 65, that's your surface water lure. You said that it's a walk the dog retriever, fairly fast walk the dog retriever?
Yes.
And is that constant speed from when it hits the water all the way back, or do you pause, or how do you work it?
I don't pause at all because
You just work it quick.
you work it quick, and that takes away the brim, and that's the stuff that normally waits for you to pause. So if you're chasing snapper, you move it quite quickly because they're very aggressive when they're feeding.
Yep.
And they'll chase it down.
Yeah, cool. So you can actually filter the species. I filter some of the unwanted biker. Welcome, brim are a welcome bycatch, but you can filter them out by working the lure a bit quicker.
That's right. Yeah.
Now, on those days when the fish aren't on the surface, again, this is most of the time, right? We're talking about those rare occasions when they come up and you get this amazing opportunity. The rest of the time, they're down a bit deeper, but we're still shallow reefs and that sort of thing.
Yep.
You've said a split tail, soft plastic. What else, mate? In terms of lures, what else should we have in our box just in case on those days when the snapper aren't on the surface, we want to sling something around that's got a good chance of picking up some decent reds?
Well, any crankbait that goes down to 20 feet.
Yep.
I'm talking bib bait.
Yep.
Quite a few people troll out off the face of the reef in 20, 30 foot of water with a deep dive bib, and they have good results.
What size, mate? So what size lure? Do you need something that gets down to 20 feet, but the length of the lure profile?
Oh, something in the sort of 80 centimetre body length.
Okay.
And the bib length can vary, of course.
Yep.
A lot of the guys use a floating lure, so if they get hooked up a bit.
Yeah, drop the rod back and let it float. Yep.
Yeah. But for me, I use plastics. I use cranks down the face of the reef because there's a profile on the reef edges that will particularly appeal goat. Green Island and Mud Island are a lot more shallow profile, but there's a sort of rocky reef section at Mud Island that goes down to 30 feet on the back and 20 in the front, and it comes up to sort of 5, 6, 7 feet from the surface. And that's brilliant when the bait's up there and the snapper are chasing it for topwater. But most of the time there you do is plastic on even up to a half-ounce head in the 30 foot of water to drop down the face of that reef. I think the most important thing is to find an area that the fish are chasing bait or that's holding bait and the fish are coming to look for it. So there's a couple of wrecks in the bay that can fish very well at certain times. The steeper reef edges normally fish pretty well on a regular basis. Most of the time it's the lee side on a run-in tide and then the backside on the run out, so the lee on the run out. So the opposite end is where the fish congregate because the bait's being washed across the top. And the drains coming off the reef, there's drains that come off the reef. Those deeper drains, the fish congregate at that drain on the last of the run out, pick up any bait fish that are coming off the shallows. And then you get your flathead, you get summer whiting, all that sort of stuff as well. It's so varied. It's just great fun out there.
It's a pretty amazing fishery, isn't it, where you can be, on the one hand, catching 50 or 60 centimetre snapper or bigger off the surface, and then you can be fishing
Coast the other side of the boat, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, amazing opportunities in Moreton Bay, and considering it's on the doorstep of one of Australia's largest populations, it does very, very well to sustain the fisheries that it does.
Oh, it does, and I've got the electric on the front. I've got a sounder on that just to give me the depth and the profile so I can see when I'm standing up the front casting exactly where I am in relation to the reef. And then I've got a bigger unit on the console, and that's where I go, my go-to stuff when I'm sort of running from A to B.
Yep.
I've got really good data on there, and I've got my spots marked. I know where to go and have a look. And it's crazy because you can work out after a while where the best spots are at certain tides to catch the fish.
That's the thing in Moreton Bay is that, and in most fisheries, I suppose, is that if you know where to fish, it doesn't really matter what tide. There's always something on every tide if you know where to go and how to go about it and where to look. You can fish right through the tides.
The worst time to fish is on the slack tides, on the top and the bottom, because nothing happens.
No run, no fun, as the old saying goes.
You need a bit of water movement over there, and also when it's glassed out, it's not good because your glasses don't really work too well, and the fish can see you from 2 cast lengths, so you've got no chance there at all on the shallows.
Yep, head out a bit deeper if it's glassed out. Yeah,
the deeper water comes in then, or go right up on the weed beds and chase the big squid that are at the moment. There's plenty of them.
Yeah, that's a story for another day, and one that I should cover at some stage is Moreton Bay squidding. But I've got a couple of questions that come from my Team Doc Lewis community, and Team Doc Lewis guys are a group of people who support the podcast, and so I give them a couple of extra questions. So these ones won't be publicly available, but one of our hey there, listeners, there is an ALF Plus edition of this podcast episode available to Team Doc Lewis over at the Team Doc Lewis website. And in that extended edition, I've asked Mike a few questions about how he sets his boat up for this style of fishing, particularly as a lot of the time he's fishing for snapper on his own, doesn't have others to help him out in the boat. So we spent a little bit of time talking about some of the creative things that he's done in terms of safety, in terms of being able to fish effectively from the boat solo. If you'd like to get hold of those, they're available, as I said, to Team Doc Lewis members. So go and check out Team Doc Lewis at team.doclewis.com. Now, everybody that joins up and becomes part of Team Doc Lewis is supporting the Australian Lure Fishing Podcast, and I really appreciate that. But they're also getting the ALF Plus extended podcast episodes. They're getting some audio masterclasses and a bunch of other resources, ebooks, and all sorts of things that are available to our members over at Team Doc Lewis. So go and check it out. It's cheap as chips, but it makes a world of difference to us keeping the podcast alive and well. You can find out more at team.doclewis.com. That's team.doclewis.com. But right now, let's go back and finish this episode with Mike.
Yeah.
Yep. Terrific. Hey, mate, I'm going to put together some show notes for this episode. So everyone who's at home listening to this can download that from doclewis.com. So if they zap over to there, have a look for episode 300 and what did I say it was going to be? 389 it's going to be. Look for episode 389, scroll down through the list, you'll find it there, and there'll be show notes there with a PDF you can download, there'll be an MP3 you can download, and of course I put some links in there to Mike's socials as well if you want to hit him up and say hello or ask him some questions. I'm sure he'd love to talk to a few ALF listeners, but all of that will be over at doclewis.com, so go and check all that out. So, mate, I'm going to leave you with I'm going to get you to leave us with one final piece of advice, and that's about the days when maybe the snapper aren't playing ball, and you've already given us a couple of clues here that maybe we could head up onto the weed banks and look for some big squid or something like that. But what are the other options, mate? If the snapper are just not playing ball at all, what advice would you have about going after another species or going to another location or spending some quality time out in the water just the same?
Well, if I'm chasing snapper, I go to other locations and to deeper water.
Okay.
If they're not right up on the edges, or I can go right up shallows and chase flathead on the sand, or brim up in the rubble with little tiny cranks and just have some fun.
No shortage options. When you go deeper for the snapper, what do you fish for them with then? You're going to those hard bodies and the soft plastics that you talked about earlier?
Yeah. And just go heavier jig heads to get them down.
Get the lures down deeper.
Because a lot of the bay is between 20 and 30 feet deep. The challenge is to find structure that's holding fish.
And not
so
sharks.
The artificials, the Peel West artificials and the artificials off of Macleay Island, Coochie Island, do hold good fish at certain times, although they do cop a fair bit of run. So you've basically got to wait for the last of the run out or the first of the run in when there's a bit of slack water and a bit of movement to get them. There's good dewey out there. There's threadfin in the Logan area, on the Logan, between the Panican Island and all the Bay Islands right off the mouth of Logan. There's actually some good threadfin salmon in there too. There's dewey in there. There's mangrove jacks. So there's plenty of jacks in Raby Bay canals and the odd jacks. And also we're getting a reasonable showing of queenies now. I got a 72 centimetre one the other day on plastics, chasing snapper. So a nice bit of bycatch. Yeah, I saw some bait flicking, flicked at it and ended up with a big queenie.
Nice. Excellent. And of course, those artificial wrecks and reefs that are in a bit more current, they're the places to fish between the moons on those neap tides where the current's a bit slower and you get a little bit longer opportunity, the window of opportunity to get a lure down to the fish is just that bit longer. Yeah,
but you need some run. If there's no run there, it's very, very difficult to get them to
open their mouths.
Take a plastic, I just sit and look at it and say, oh, yeah. Not today, brother.
Yeah. I'll wait till another day when there's a bit of current. Hey, Mike, it's been brilliant talking to you. Thank you for introducing us to the surface water snapper. I'm sure a lot of our listeners are got their ears pricked up right now and they're thinking, oh, there's going to be some opportunities somewhere near home where I can give this a bit of a go. You've got our creative juices flowing and I'm sure a few people who might not otherwise have had a rod rigged up with a SAMI 65 when they were snapper fishing might actually have one rigged up the next time they go out. So
yeah, the sugar pins and the other top waters actually work as well, as long as, well, what I found is the ghost patterns seem to work the best.
Okay.
Or the mimics of the bait fish at the time, either hardy heads or the little tiny bay anchovies.
Yep, frogmouth pilchards and those sorts of things.
Yep.
Terrific. So any of those small walk the dog style surface lures?
Yeah, anything's worth a try. If you see the bait spraying up and you've got top water, throw it.
Give it a go. Terrific stuff. Hey, Mike, thank you so much for coming along. It's been a great pleasure to talk to you, and I appreciate your time today. We're going to send this to air on Monday, and I look forward to doing that. Until then, everybody stay safe, drive safe, be safe out in the water, and tight lines, and we'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now.
Thanks. Good night.
Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Mike Connolly. It's a very different style of fishing, very opportunistic style of fishing that doesn't come up every time you go out. But if you're ready, you're prepared for it, then you're in with a chance. And Mike, well, what do you say about Mike? He is obviously one of those salt-of-the-earth guys, no frills, no nonsense, just tells it as it is and enjoys some great fishing along the way. Now, speaking of great fishing, if you would like to improve your fishing, if you'd like to catch more fish on lures, and if you enjoy the ALF podcast and you'd like to support the show and help to ensure that it continues on into the future, then I'd really appreciate if you check out Team Doc Lures membership. There's a bunch of people over at the Team Doc Lures site who are supporters of the podcast. It costs them around about the equivalent of half a cup of coffee a week to be supporters of the podcast. And in return, they get some audio masterclasses, they get some extended podcast episodes through ALF Plus. They get access to a members-only area and a panel of experts. Lots of great stuff over at Team Doc Lures. And of course, as I've said, every person that joins up helps to keep us on air. $2.50 a week might not seem a lot to you, but it certainly makes a difference to us here at the ALF podcast. So go and check it out at team.doclures.com. But now, folks, that brings episode 389 to a close. I'll be back on the last day of June, Wednesday the 30th, with the next episode of the Australian Lure Fishing Podcast. Until then, take care, and I'll see you out of the water sometime.
Don't miss a single episode of ALF. Subscribe and rate us on iTunes, or jump on the doclures.com website for downloads and show notes. Till the next episode, tight lines.